Well, good afternoon. Welcome back to Miami Hurricanes Talk with Danny. My guest is Abby Schnable. Did I get it right? Schnable? Spell that?
Schnable, but close
Schnable. Abby Schnable from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. CANES and Pittsburgh Saturday noon on ABC. Big game for both teams. A couple of things I noticed when I looked at your resume, Abby, is you went to Loyola. Were you there during Sister Jean's time?
Yeah, so I was actually my freshman year was the year they went to the Final Four. And my senior year was the year they went to the Sweet 16. So yeah, I was there during the prime years. I've met Sister Jean many a time.
Yeah, sadly she passed this year. Great life. What a life. Holy cow. Notice you worked another thing I noticed, Abby, you graduated Loyola. Resident assistant. I noticed that pretty interesting. You also worked in St. Louis for 590. What was that like?
Oh, so that was my first internship, and I had never really dipped into the world of radio before, but that was really cool because I was doing a lot of the behind the scenes, like cutting clips for the Blues Stanley Cup run that year, actually.
Yes.
And I got to go on air a few times. There were a lot of us interns, so it was actually really cool to like swap stories and just learn all the technical stuff, which has actually helped out as I've gotten into like podcasting a little bit more this year.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 7 years, so I think it's good for me to try to get to know the people that cover the opposing team for the University of Miami against the University of Miami. I noticed here you started in the early days of Marquee Sports Network. That was the Cubs. The Cubs started that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, before they actually launched. So the January of 2020, they were looking for interns. I happened to get a call back. And yeah, I was there up until the pandemic really hit.
Of course, yeah.
I was doing a lot of stuff, just again, a lot of the behind the scenes, kind of cutting clips, helping, prepare the various specials, the studio behind the scenes, just a lot of cool things. And that what was really cool about that one is at the end of that season, I was actually in the like little credits that they had after the Cubs had finished. So
yeah, the Cubs were for many years on WGN. Of course, I used to listen to them when I lived here. Harry Carey, the legendary Harry Carey, also worked in St. Louis for a time too.
Yeah, I was just in St. Louis for internships. I never worked there like post grad, but I mean, we talked about this right before we started. Great sports town. There's nothing like Cardinals, baseball, Blues, hockey. Wish we had a basketball team. I'm still mad at Stan Kroenke for taking the Rams from us, although it's returning back. I know, but I love St. Louis. St. Louis sports are always fun.
Got to do it once. Loyola Phoenix. Tell our audience about Loyola Phoenix. What's that about? You were a writer, assistant sports editor, then became we're an assistant sports editor.
Yeah, that's our student paper over at Loyola. And that was really cool because in Chicago, there's not necessarily like a Loyola beat reporter or even like a college's beat reporter. So I was there during the prime time of Loyola basketball and all eyes were on that. And so I was actually at so many of the big games. I didn't get to go to the Final Four as a freshman, but like the March Madness run in 2021, my senior year. And just like, again, I got to meet Sister Jean very frequently. I knew Porter Mosier very well to the point where when I was a couple years ago, I covered a West Virginia, Oklahoma game. And he is the coach at Oklahoma now. Yeah, small world. And it's kind of cool that I've branched out from, starting at Little Loyola Chicago to now covering, ACC football.
I noticed you also, I didn't put it here, you covered Wisconsin. Tell us about Wisconsin. What was that like being in Madison? I know Barry Alvarez was the AD there for a while there. Donna Shalala was the provost. I think one of the administrative posts there before she came to the University of Miami.
Yeah, so I was there for about a year and a half. I got hired to be the men's basketball beat reporter because that was always my shtick, especially early in my career. As I've gotten older, I've branched out to, I cover volleyball and football now too. I got to help with the football team. I didn't do a ton with it because we had a really solid college sports staff, like 5 people covering just Wisconsin. And basketball was really good the year that
Ryan.
Yeah. They won the Maui Invitational that year. Johnny Davis got drafted. They won the Big Ten. Unfortunately, got knocked out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. But what was really cool about that is I had never really lived in a college town. And even though I wasn't a college kid anymore, I really got to see that experience. I will say that I do like a mix a little bit more, just a bigger city. But yeah, it really set me up for when I made the jump over to the Post Gazette and started covering things here.
Yeah, great. Let's get to last week's game, Georgia Tech against Georgia Tech. All I can say is, wow.
Yeah.
How they dominated Georgia Tech in every aspect. Mm-hmm. It was at one point 28-0. Georgia Tech came back, but Pittsburgh made the stops they had to make. Let's start with Mason Hinchney, whatever it may. Start with Mason's performance. 20 of 27, 226, 2 TDs, and he also rushed for 32 yards, but he did lose a fumble. Tell us about the offense and how they did last week and how you lead up to this game.
Yeah, the offense is really interesting because it took them a while to get to this point. You know, they had a quarterback change. Redshirt sophomore Eli Holstein was there for the first 4 games, and then Mason Heinschel took over for the Boston College game. And since then, he's been taking over. True freshman. You would think he would get rattled, especially in the environment that was at Bobby Dodd Stadium last weekend. Mm-hmm. But that was actually the only game that he hasn't thrown an interception. So, you know, kudos to him there. This offense, you know, it has gone through phases. It was very pass heavy, which you wouldn't necessarily think with an all-star running back like Desmond Reed in the mix, but Desmond Reed has been in and out of the lineup just because of various injuries. He's a smaller guy and he gets banged up a lot. But, you know, with the emergence of another true freshman in Jakirian, you might also hear him called Boosie Turner. He just absolutely really came on the scene first against Florida State, but then it seems like he's just all the big games, he really steps up. I mean, his 56-yard rushing touchdown last week put Pitt back up by double digits, which was helpful because this Pitt team has been known, or at least early in the season, has been known to drop leads. But yeah, the offensive line had its best performance, really opening up the holes for the running backs. For the most part, protecting Mason Heinschel. I know he had a few, I think it was 6 sacks, if I recall correctly. But the thing with that is Mason sometimes takes a little bit too long to throw the ball. He's still getting into the rhythm of being not a quarterback, because he does that really well. It's just, you know, little freshman things that you wouldn't necessarily like have to deal with maybe a Carson Beck kind of quarterback.
Yeah.
But the offensive line has really shored things up, and this wide receiver room is deep. Like, you can't just circle Kenny Johnson and focus on Kenny Johnson, because they could go honestly 6-7 people deep, and Mason Heinschel is going to find them. So it's honestly become way more two-dimensional than it was, which I think was really key for the Georgia Tech game.
Yeah, I looked at that, 412 yards, 226 passing, like I said, 186 rushing. No, actually more than that. Turner had 201 yards last week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that caught my eye right away. 5 for 13 on third downs, 22 first downs, held the ball for almost 30 minutes. Against Miami, you know you're going to have to do that. Now, the question I would ask is, how is the Pittsburgh offensive line preparing to take on Bain and Mesidor, especially the tackles Percy and Bear?
I'm hoping that they have learned a lot from playing against Notre Dame, because I think Miami is a tougher front seven than Notre Dame, in my opinion. People might not like that, but I hope they learned from that experience, because that was a really rough day for the offensive line. I will say Jeff Percy wasn't actually in that game. He was dealing with an injury, but he is now back full time. Another little injury thing is the starting right guard, I believe, maybe it's left. Keith Gueva went out a while ago, and they replaced him with Ryan Coretta. Ryan Coretta was out last weekend, so Kendall Stanley was playing. So there is a little bit of potential weakness. I do think this offensive line has really been tight despite the injuries. As far as getting ready for Bain and Mesidor, I'm sure they've been running all the drills as possible. You know, Ryan Bear had a really on the Boosie Turner 56-yard touchdown. He held 2 guys down, but that was against a Georgia Tech defense that isn't particularly strong. I think they are going to take anything that they have learned from the Notre Dame game and bring it to this one, because I know they were, not only the offensive line, but everyone as a whole was really, they kept using the word embarrassed with the performance, and with a lot of stakes on the line for Pitt, potential ACC championship game. I expect them to be a little bit stronger, especially because they're coming off of probably the offensive line's best performance last week.
Yeah. Now, what was Narduzzi's thought process going into that Notre Dame game? I mean, come on. Say it doesn't matter. Are you kidding me? Notre Dame doesn't matter. What was that? I think there might have been some context lost in that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was getting to the point of, Pitt's best playoff chances was coming through the ACC. Now, do I agree with him saying that, it's not a must win? No, you want to win that game no matter what, if you can. And I think I'm grateful it didn't hurt the fan base, because the fan base still showed out, especially with game day there. But yeah, it was a little interesting because, again, I see his point in that, yeah, the Georgia Tech and the Miami games were probably bigger, but you shouldn't be going into Notre Dame and not thinking it matters. And I think us as the media have gotten used to him putting his foot in his mouth, so we didn't even realize at the moment that it was, a bigger deal than it was. But I do think there probably has been a little bit more preparation and a little bit more intensity coming into this Miami game, so it's hard to kind of say, is it going to be a similar performance to Notre Dame?
I look at the defense last week. Rasheem Biles, 15 tackles, Kyle Lewis, 11. Combined between the 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and of course Lovelace with the 100-yard interception, which really broke Georgia Tech's back when you look at it. They allowed 378, but they allowed 21 first downs. But the thing I was impressed with is 3 for 14 on third downs. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best linebacker cores in the nation, and I don't think they get enough attention as is. I mean, when you really look at the fact that all 3 of them have 2 interceptions. Like, that's not super common for a linebacker core. Maybe more now, but you tend to see it a little bit more from your secondary. So for those guys, not only they just cause chaos, they're going to put a lot of pressure on Carson Beck. They're going to, get the tackles. I mean, the fact that Rasheem Biles continues to lead in tackles despite missing a handful of games this season is just really impressive. That group is very feisty, and they don't want to let anything past them. They've been really part of this front 7 that has been phenomenal at stopping the run, other than against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's like a mulligan for Pitt, I feel like. And they're just really the way that they play together and the way that they complement who they need to complement has just created such a standout defense that, has really flustered teams, because if it's not Kyle Lewis, it's Rasheem Biles. And if it's not Rasheem Biles, it's Braylon Lovelace. It's not like you can just, tag in on All-American Kyle Lewis or, Rasheem Biles, who's having a really good season. Braylon Lovelace tends to get a little, not forgotten about, but a little less respect than the 2 of them. And all 3 of them are just so dangerous to defenses. And you've seen teams get flustered. I mean, Florida State isn't as good as we all thought they would be, but Florida State was really flustered by Pitt's defense, and it was led by those 3.
Yeah, how is the secondary, namely Lynham and Battle, preparing to deal with the receiving core? We're going to bring in like Daniels and especially Malachi Tony. That's the big one there. How are they preparing to deal with him?
Well, I'm hoping that they've, taken a lot from what they did at Georgia Tech and are bringing that here. Obviously, different offense, but Stephen Thompson and I, my beat partner, we talk a lot about how we've been pretty hard on this secondary, just because it feels like with such an older group, they haven't been that impressive. So I do think that is an area that Miami could potentially exploit. I will say though, Lynham and Battle, and also the safeties in Javon McIntyre, Cruz Brookins, and Kavir Baines Marquez. They all are coming off of one of their best performances. So I think they're very locked in. I think they've, learned from all of those things. I know I probably keep saying that, but the fact that I used to think this was probably Pitt's, one of their weaknesses. Now I don't think that anymore. We saw them really hunt for the ball against Georgia Tech, and I think they're going to be hungry. I think your guys are going to challenge them. I mean,
Yes.
every time I look at Malachi Tony's stats, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not sure Pitt has seen a player like that this season. And so it's going to be interesting. I know that they've been hitting everything hard, and have probably been looking at things for a little bit now to just really prepare for these two receivers. And I mean, the offense as a whole from Miami. But again, they're coming off of a really good performance that I think should carry over pretty well against Miami. Miami just might have the edge a little bit there.
Yeah, knowing that's going to be cold up at Agriture on Saturday. And I know that is a very tough place to kick.
Yes.
As we know. If it comes down to a field goal, do you think I know the kicker has been injured. Is he due back this week?
So he's actually been sick, and I say that with an asterisk because we've still seen him at practices and still seen him, warm up before that Notre Dame game, which was the first game he missed that he was sick. When we asked Pat Narduzzi about it on Monday, about a timeline, he was like, I wish I had information for you guys, which isn't exactly reassuring. I would hope he's back because Pitt's backup kicker, Sam Carpenter, has not been impressive at all. And, this game is going to could come down to a few points. And Trey Bukowski is that missing piece for Pitt in hopefully being able to get a few points there, but we have no idea genuinely, like if he'll play, if he won't. I wouldn't be surprised if we get the availability report later in the week that he is listed as questionable, and then before the game, a game time decision. And because it's just been so up in the air with him.
Yeah, who is the less heralded player you think that can make an impact for Pitt in this game?
I can't even use Boosie Turner as that anymore because he's a big name now. I think I'm going to go Kavir Baines-Marquez, transfer from UC Davis. He's been quietly, leading or helping this defense when Pitt was down Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis earlier in the season. He kind of came down and played a little bit of linebacker while also taking care of, the space and the safety. I think he's a very crafty guy, especially when tackling guys, especially while they're running. He's not leading in tackles or anything, but he has made some incredible plays. Like he picked off Haynes King. It was Haynes King's third interception of the season. And while he wasn't able to run it in, it's not his first interception. He's leading the team in interceptions. And when you consider how, again, close this game could be, turnovers are going to be a big part. And I think Kavir Baines-Marquez will play a part in that. And he's definitely something, even though he is not at the top of the depth chart, you can't forget about him because he can be very dangerous.
Let me ask you this, Abby, and I know people can ask this. What will be the single most important factor for Pitt to win this game? Is it controlling the line of scrimmage? Is it winning the turnover battle, or is it something else entirely?
I think if Pitt can make Miami one-dimensional, whether it's stopping the run or limiting the pass, then Pitt has a pretty decent chance of being able to open that up. The problem then comes on the offensive side, and can this offensive line handle Miami's defensive line? But I do think that if Pitt can stop the run, that's going to help them a lot, because I don't see them stopping the pass with how not great the secondary has been. Yeah. But if they can limit the run, which they've been really good at this season, that definitely opens up things for the Panthers.
Yeah, I think so too. For me, the single most important factor to win this game is do not turn the ball over.
Yes.
Take care of the cold, take care of business, control the line of scrimmage, and have Carson Beck keep Carson Beck. But we know it's going to be cold up there. That means the running game is going to be critical. How do they do against that very stout Pitt defense, which is very stout? I can tell you that. So basically, do you have a gut feeling how it's going to shake out, Abby? And what's the reason behind it?
I had to do picks on our podcast earlier, and I did give the edge to Miami just because I feel like Pitt, the most talented team Pitt has played this season was Notre Dame, and we'll never know really how prepared they were for those games. And considering Pat Narduzzi's comment, who knows genuinely how prepared they were and how locked in they were for that one. And so I give it the edge because Notre Dame really, really, really flustered Pitt, and this is another very well-rounded team that Pitt probably hasn't seen similarities to other than Notre Dame, and knowing what they did against Notre Dame, I see Miami taking the edge, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pitt pulled it out, which I know is a cop-out answer, but that's where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Abby, I think with everything on the line, really for both teams, and then the winner can wait and see what happens between SMU and Cal and Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
The loser's season's over.
Yep.
Miami was in this, I won't say similar position, but in a position like this last year in Syracuse. Basically, you knew that you won, you were in. Miami doesn't, both teams won't have that luxury this time. But with a lot to play for, and the image Mario Cristobal has had, and our fans have been on him for not closing out games and being conservative at the wrong time. I really feel this Miami has a chip on his shoulder. I think Miami is a tough place up in Aperture and in Pittsburgh. I think Miami wins a very close game. I'm going to go Miami 27, Pitt 13. That's
I think it'll be a little bit closer than that. If I had to pick, which my partner knows I hate when we have to do picks because I've never been great at them. I would say like 27-21. I think it's going to be closer than people realize. I think maybe not the Miami fan base, but a lot of people don't realize how talented this Pitt team is, just probably because of that bad loss to Notre Dame. But this is a group that has continued to surprise people, and I think they're going to put the pressure. I don't think Miami is going to cover that 6.5 spread that I saw earlier. I don't know if it's changed since then. But again, I wouldn't be surprised knowing the stakes if Pitt pulled it off. But this is probably the second. If it's not the most challenging team, it's one of the most challenging teams they've had, and I'll just be curious to see how Pitt comes out.
All right. To wrap up, Abby, what is the best way for listeners to connect with you or follow your work? And any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, so I'm at Twitter at Abby Schnable, full name. You can find me our podcast channel on YouTube. It's PG Pitt Sports, PG being Post Gazette. We also did a preview podcast of this game talking about Miami. We do a lot of different podcasts. We'll have a breakdown. Also, if you just want to read my stuff, it's at post-gazette.com. I'm very active on Twitter though, so if you have any more questions for me, hit me up there. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited for a good game. I don't really have much more to break down. I think these teams actually match up fairly well, and I'm excited to see if this young Pitt group can pull it off. But it will be exciting to see just how the ACC in general shakes up with how crazy and chaotic all these tiebreaker rules are.
Yeah, I think so too. Abby, listen, have a great Thanksgiving to you and the family. Thanks for coming on. Greatly appreciated. Let's enjoy the game Saturday, and let's talk down the road.
Yeah, thanks so much, Danny.